Was one destructive path of nature's wrath. This is one Mother's Day that's never really done. The birth of the McCoy septuplets made this family world famous. Now, 18 months later, how are Mom and Dad handling their house full of toddlers?
It's getting easier in some aspects, more difficult in others.
How are the septuplets doing with their first steps, their first words?
Are you talking to me? Really?
Ann Curry with the latest on the McCoy septuplets, a Dateline exclusive. Dateline with Jane Pauley and Stone Phillips, plus Tom Brokaw, Katie Couric, and Maria Shriver. From Landstuhl, Germany, here is Jane Pauley.
Good evening. We'll be bringing you the latest on the McCoy septuplets, but we start tonight with tornadoes that a little over 24 hours ago bore down on Oklahoma and Kansas. Even now, the extent of the devastation can barely be grasped, except for the certainty that the toll was enormous. Dennis Murphy follows the trail of terror in a Dateline minute by minute.
It's a half-mile wide. Mike, it's going to a half-mile wide.
There had been warnings all afternoon. But on the satellite map and at your front door are two very different things.
You folks need to seek shelter immediately.
Early yesterday evening looked like midnight, twisters raking the Oklahoma grasslands. Clouds so black and low it looked as though you could touch them. Funnels swirling down, devouring what they lacked.
Back up, back up, back up.
The relentless tornado that cut a swath 45 miles southwest of Oklahoma City was estimated to be half a mile wide. It marched through farming communities like the town of Moore.
Well, we just made it to the bathroom, just when it hit, and it lifted everything up. We don't have anything now.
The people who live in Tornado Alley took refuge in cellars. There was nowhere to run. It was on them. The tornadoes stayed on the ground in some places for hours, voracious, carrying away homes, maiming, killing.
Hey, we need some muscle over here now.
And when those who survived came out to look around, there were hardly words for the devastation they saw.
It's all gone. It's all gone.
Places that were, communities with homes, churches, schools, are no longer. Literally gone, vanished in a matter of minutes. And today, some lives will never be quite the same.
Potentially severe weather is building right now in the southwestern part of Oklahoma.
The Oklahoma City weather forecasters were the town criers of the looming disaster. At 4:30 in the afternoon, they were tracking the storm line. Then it was all still alerts and warnings.
And the possibility of some tornadic activity in the next 4 to 5 hours.
But half an hour later, a funnel dipped out of the clouds.
That is a tornado on the ground. You can see it right there from our forewarned units.
TV cameras recorded the first moments of some funnel clouds forming, small twisters becoming one large one. Winds were being estimated at 150 to 175 miles per hour. Reporters covered the storm from terrifying vantage points.
A large and violent tornado right now, more than likely an F3, F4 tornado, winds probably in excess, or up around 200 miles per hour right now.
Backing up, we're backing up. Hello? Back up, back up. Get me on there, get me on there. Back up.
The storm front was advancing on the town of Moore. Winds were building, 200 miles per hour, 250.
This storm is almost a mile wide. It is about...
By 7 p.m., it was in full fury, cutting through the grasslands but bearing down on people. Amateur storm chasers grabbed these video shots as they ran parallel to the vortex.
There's debris. Go, 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 go! There's debris.
Major tornado did major damage. It took out several structures, demolished several structures I see things coming out of the ground right now. We are inside a band of rain passing by us. There are electric flashes right now. Emergency vehicles are pulling over on the side of the road here.
There's a large one.
Yeah, the tornado is still wide, still intense right here. I see huge trees flying through the air, debris flying around this tornado.
Electrical transformers exploded against the black clouds. What was about to happen next would be called one of the worst outbreaks of tornadoes in U.S. history.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It's gone. The neighborhood is gone. We are over a neighborhood just west of Tinker Air Force Base. It is gone, Mike. Up here,
Block
Steve, up
after
here,
block
here,
of homes erased. Only the streets remain. Mobile home communities upended. Gas lines ruptured.
There's gas leaking everywhere. There's gas leaking everywhere. You people need to be careful.
Yeah, and all the way from our house down to Western is gone. No, it's all gone.
Those who wrote it out will never forget it.
When I actually seen it, I was like startled. Just looking at the debris that was flying up. You had sheets of metal. You had a freaking cow in the air.
We were holding the cellar door down, several of us, and we had neighbors, we had our children, our grandchildren, and we were all we're just so thankful.
I'm thankful.
Just so thankful.
God.
There were countless heroes, rescuers in the chaos. At 8 o'clock, starting to get dark now, a 5-week-old baby plucked from the rubble.
My baby.
Where's our baby at?
Right here,
My
right
baby.
here. I got it.
My grandma.
It's okay. They're fine.
Let's go up here.
Can you walk? Can you take her up to the ambulance?
Yeah.
Put her on that scoop and take her up there.
After the storm had passed through, it was the job of extricating the injured and rushing them to hospital. Darkness fell, and no one knew in 2 states how many would be found dead in the morning light. In Wichita, Kansas, the same storm line pummeled parts of the city. At least 5 people there are reported dead. In Hayesville, Kansas, a terrified family of 4 were trapped in their pickup as live-down power lines draped their vehicle. In the pre-dawn hours, search and rescue teams went door to door looking for injured people pinned by debris. They'd mark a building with an X to indicate it had already been searched. The smell of gas filled the air. The threat of fires was very real. And throughout, the wail of ambulances punctuated the night. Yesterday's clouds that looked like the end of the world were monsters, about as bad as it gets. There were 76 separate funnel clouds identified within the storm system. It swept across southwestern Oklahoma into southern Kansas. If you remember the killer tornado in the movie Twister, one of these tornadoes was one of those, the rare dreaded F5, spinning winds up to 300 miles an hour that can knock down anything in its way. Each year, only a handful of tornadoes that touch down are that powerful.
This cell is severe and is showing some significant rotation just north of Fort Sill.
Weather forecasters could and did predict the twisters. The classic cocktail of conditions was in place. A cold front moving off the Pacific, sliding under a warm front flowing up from the Gulf of Mexico. That created thunderstorms called supercells. Colliding winds began spinning in ever tighter coils, dropping out of the clouds in the characteristic funnels. Sometimes they happen over open prairies, phenomena on the horizon. These tore into people's homes at dinner time.
We had violent tornadoes through a heavily populated area, and that's a very bad combination.
Harold Brooks is a tornado specialist at the National Severe Storm Laboratory. Why was this such a killer of a storm?
Many of the homes in Oklahoma City don't have basements, and there were parts of the damage path where if you could not get underground, the tornado was not survivable.
Not in ground zeros like the rural community of Bridge Creek, Oklahoma, population about 16,000, turned into rubble. It has been completely destroyed. This town with a single school, grades K through 12. Sherry Taylor huddled in the Bridge Creek Baptist Church with her family as the winds howled in about 7:30. Incredibly, they survived. The church that sheltered them was destroyed.
If it wouldn't have been for him laying on top of me, I think I would have went up in it because my feet were flying in the air.
For Jeremiah Rivers, the church was an important part of his life.
It makes me sad but happy at the same time because I get to spend my last time at this church, what's left of it, and find whatever I can to help us start a new church.
Tom Duckett is the church pastor.
You feel a part of most everybody. You know, whether they go to your church or another church or whether they don't go to church, doesn't really matter. It hits us all. When we lose somebody, it hits us all.
Alan James, a carpet layer, lost his trailer home, as did his daughter and son-in-law across the way.
The only thing we have left was the clothes on our backs and our automobile that we left in. But we got each other, so you know, as long as you got that, you can start over.
James was able to salvage some tools, but the truck he relies on for his livelihood was totaled. His daughter and son-in-law picked through the remains of what had been their home, and not one possession made it through. They lost everything they owned. And as chilling as any, the story of this Bridge Creek father. Dion Darnell and his wife Samantha were cradling their 3-week-old infant in their arms as the storm closed in. Darnell tells of his horror as the house was sucked up off its foundation and blown into the sky. The baby, Ashton, is among the missing.
Oh, I have faith that he'll be found, and I hope and pray to God that he's okay. But I mean, if he's not, he's in a better place than we are.
So it went today. Mind-numbing loss as far as the eye could see. In Washington, President Clinton declared 11 Oklahoma counties disaster areas, and a similar declaration will be made for parts of Kansas.
Whole communities have been leveled. Homes and possessions have been turned into splinters and rubble.
The governor of Oklahoma warned against price gouging and encouraged Oklahomans to watch out for one another.
It's very important for good neighbors to be good neighbors. If your neighbor is homeless, bring them in. If your neighbor needs help, medical care, or food, clothing, or shelter, help them get it.
Unstable weather continued throughout the Southwest today. A tornado touched down in Texas. One person was killed. And in Oklahoma, as a curfew goes into effect tonight, victims of the storm are moving into the safety of shelters. Mr. Brooks, look ahead for us tonight, tomorrow. What do you see coming?
It appears that there's a potential for another significant outbreak of tornadoes in that region of the country, in the extreme southern plains. It's not clear that it'll be as deadly as last night was.
Last night, the deadliest weather event in Oklahoma in more than 50 years.
As hard as it is to comprehend destruction of this magnitude, here's a number you can think about. The tornadoes destroyed at least 1,500 homes in the Oklahoma City area alone.
This is Dateline Tuesday for May 4th, with reports tonight from Bob McCoy, Ann Curry, and Dennis Murphy. Still ahead, one neighborhood, one street, devastated by last night's tornadoes.
This is the most destruction I've ever experienced.
A close-up look at 7th Street in Midwest City, hit by the terrifying power of nature's wrath. Coming up on Dateline, surviving the tornado's fury, the devastation, the loss for residents on one street in one hard-hit town. When Dateline continues in a moment. From our studios in New York, here is Stone Phillips.
From the air, it seems almost surreal. Suburban streets, once lined with trees and homes, flattened, the destruction stretching on for miles, the scene like something out of a war zone. And those who survived the swarm of tornadoes will tell you they were under attack by one of the most powerful and terrifying forces on Earth. Tonight, Bob McCoy follows a tornado's path down one street, 7th Street, in Midwest City, Oklahoma, for a close-up encounter with nature's wrath.
Southeast 7th Street, Midwest City, Oklahoma. Yesterday was a tidy row of neat suburban homes.
It just looked like a normal neighborhood. Houses, a drivable street.
Today, this street might as well be in Kosovo.
This is the most destruction I've ever experienced.
At 7:51 p.m. last night, a 200-mile-an-hour twister ripped its way down the street, toppling trees and power lines and destroying more than half the homes. If you want to really understand the utter devastation of what's happened here, come to Southeast 7th Street in Midwest City, just south of Oklahoma City. Last night at 7:45, this neighborhood was what Middle America is all about, hard-working people at home with their families. You walk down 7th Street today, it's a different story.
I've lived in Oklahoma all my life. I've been here 43 years, and I've never seen anything like this.
If I could get you to go ahead of us, make sure we got a clear path.
Just after dawn this morning, rescue workers arrived at the corner of Delta and 7th. EMT Bill Sander drove 120 miles to get to Midwest City, and he was one of the first on the scene at 7th Street.
Awesome. It's just unbelievable what wind can do. Just what it does to the houses. I mean, they were here yesterday morning and they were gone last night.
It is hard to imagine now, but less than 24 hours ago,
This house was someone's home of almost 40 years, culmination of a lifetime of work. This is what's left. But there were miracles that took place on 7th Street last night, too. And despite how it looks, this house was one of them.
I've never even seen anything like this, and we've lived here our whole lives.
Tara Wilson and her sister, Brandy Walker, were watching television at their grandparents' house on 7th Street when they got word the tornado was headed their way.
About 7:25, the TVs went off and they started the alarms over the TV.
Ever been hit by one before? No. 30 years ago, the girl's grandfather spent $500, a lot of money then, for something many of his neighbors didn't have, a storm cellar. Last night, that investment paid off as the family huddled in the tiny shelter and waited for the tornado.
Freight train sound, it got quiet, and then all we could hear was a freight train sound, and then we just heard just crashing, and then we could feel, the debris and everything falling in on top of us.
When it was over, the girls were safe, but nothing prepared them for what they saw when they finally emerged from the storm cellar.
When I poked my head up out, I just couldn't get over that there was nothing left here. I mean, this place that I have known my whole life is gone.
Just across the street, the Paz family was also trying to pick up the pieces of their life.
I feel like I'm in a bad dream, and I'm hoping it'll wake up. I'll wake up.
24-year-old Kim Paz has lived on 7th Street since she was a little girl. Today, she's trying to salvage what she can.
Old stuff from high school.
Last night, Kim was on the phone with her friend Chris when she heard the roar.
My mother and brother were running to her bedroom closet.
Kim followed, but only made it halfway across her mother's bedroom before the tornado hit.
By the time I got in her bedroom, the windows were all busting through, and I just dropped to the floor. And then that's when everything came through. It seemed like forever, but it was only probably a couple of minutes. The only thing I did think was that I was going to die.
She survived with only a few minor scratches, but today, her losses are enormous.
My books are somewhere in here.
Kim says she won't be able to finish her college semester without those books, and she feels even worse about her younger sister, about to graduate from high school.
When she showed up this morning, she asked me for her cap and gown, and I couldn't find it.
The cap and gown and Kim's books are in there somewhere, among the rubble and the 2 walls that remain of her home on 7th Street.
I am glad that I'm alive, and, not having everything that I did have is fine, but it's just going to be hard, and I know that eventually I'll move on.
But for now, she'll move away from what just last night was a nice street in a normal American neighborhood. It may be some time before Southeast 7th Street seems that way again.
Oklahoma Governor Frank Keating has been surveying the disaster scenes firsthand. He joins us now from Moore, Oklahoma, one of the hardest hit areas. He's at the First Baptist Church where the Red Cross and Salvation Army are coordinating relief efforts. Governor, thanks for joining us tonight. What's the situation as we speak?
Well, Stone, things are improving. The weather is not as it was, obviously, last night or even this morning. We had some very, very strong thunderstorms, but the power of these storms were absolutely incalculable. 200 to 300 mile-an-hour winds. The storm that went through here was a half-mile wide. One of the other large storms anywhere from a half-mile to a mile wide. We've never seen anything like this in modern times. And the storm in this area put down and really walked for 19 miles, destroying everything in its path. Some small communities in the state badly, badly damaged. And this is in a state, by the way, Stone, I've never seen a tornado. The mayor of Oklahoma City, a lifetime Oklahoman as I, never seen a tornado. These kinds of things we don't expect as often as perhaps a lot of people think they happen, but this one was the granddaddy of them all and literally laid waste to a big chunk of our state.
How many people remain missing tonight, and when are you going to be able to account for everyone?
Well, right now we have 38 people dead. We have 2 people missing in this area. One is a small 2-year-old. Obviously, last night and this morning there were lists and lists of people who were reportedly missing. But I think most of those were individuals who are in shelters and churches, and they've been accounted for. But right now, the death toll is at 38. We treated some 660 people in hospitals. Some have been, of course, retained because they're very seriously injured. This was a major disaster for our state and a very sad thing for the people who, behind me and other neighborhoods, who literally lost everything, every memory of their lives, destroyed up in smoke, so to speak.
Any encouraging words tonight for the people of your state?
Well, we're stitching together. I mean, the most encouraging word that I have is that though we've had some rumors, no looting that's been reported, the donations are pouring in from companies and individuals, food and clothing and shelter, opportunities to rebuild. And President Clinton declared this a disaster area, which will give us the resources necessary to rebuild, which we appreciate.
Well, our thoughts will be with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Governor Keating. We'll have the very latest on the deadly weather over the Plains states later on Dateline, and you can track developments on the storms on our website at www.dateline.msnbc.com.
Coming up next, the McCoy septuplets are taking their first steps into the toddler years, creating new challenges for mom and dad.
The discipline issues come in, you know, when you tell them no, when they look at you and do it anyway.
The latest on how they're doing, a Dateline exclusive. On NBC, winner of 6 National Headliner Awards, the year's most honored television news magazine, Dateline, will be right back.
Mother's Day is coming up this Sunday, so tonight we thought we'd bring you a glimpse of one Mother's Day unlike any other. Bobby McCoy is mom to what may be the most famous brood in the world, the McCoy septuplets. Dateline broadcast the first pictures of the septuplets and some other precious firsts, their first weeks together, their first birthday. Well, now the children are starting to walk and talk. It's giving mom and dad their first taste of life with 7 toddlers, beginning to get into everything like you can't imagine. Each child developing in his or her own individual way. Here's Ann Curry with a Dateline exclusive.
Mother of 8 children, 7 of whom were born on the same day. That doesn't necessarily qualify me to write a book about motherhood. My oldest child has just turned 3 years old. I don't know yet what it's like to be the mother of a 4-year-old. I certainly don't know how to parent teenagers. But with the birth of our babies, my husband, Kenny, and I embarked on an adventure given to us by God.
It's still hard to believe that just 18 months ago, all these children were snuggled inside their mother's then 55-inch stomach.
Now, a year and a half after the septuplets' incredible birth, each is progressing at his or her own pace. And as you'll see, some are making strong strides. Others are struggling to catch up.
And while it's too soon for Bobby's 4 sons and 3 daughters to understand the meaning of Mother's Day, they are learning how to express love for their mom.
Seeing the smiles on the faces of my children when I talk to them provides some of the most rewarding moments of motherhood. Something about the sound of my voice makes their eyes sparkle. And when I say their names, sometimes they even laugh with joy. I know how they feel. I remember how I felt when Michaela first began calling me Mom. Few moments in life are that precious.
In her new book, celebrating the wonder of motherhood, Bobby shares the joy of achieving a lifelong goal. Why did you want so much to be a mother?
When I was growing up, like from 5 until I left for college, Mom was home every single day. And so that's the only thing I knew. You know, that's what moms did, is they stayed at home and cooked and sewed and cleaned and ironed. And I don't know if it was a conscious decision that, you know, I want to be a mom.
In fact, Bobby dreamed of having babies from the time she was a child herself. Her mother, Peggy Hepworth, remembers.
When she was about 4 years old, and I was standing at the kitchen sink, and she came up and she said, "Mommy, where do babies come from?" I told her babies come from God, and that totally satisfied her, and she went off to play. A short time later, she came back and she said, "If babies come from God, do you suppose he would have any left over for me?" And did God have leftover babies for her? I guess he did.
But from the moment the McCoys made history on November 19th, 1997,
4 boys, 3 girls, all healthy.
the septuplets' future has been questioned. If all survived, would they suffer long-term consequences from having limited room to grow in the womb? What about the dangers of entering the world almost 10 weeks early? And how could one woman adequately mother this many children at once? Few could fathom what was going on inside this tiny house in Carlisle, Iowa, when all the babies finally came home from the hospital last spring. At first, Bobby needed round-the-clock help from relatives, her church family, and the local community. By the fall, she had cut the volunteer schedule to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. When we visited last November, this was a typical day for Bobby. 6:45 a.m. Kenny supervised the first of 32 daily bottles before leaving for work. Bobby tended to Natalie and Alexis's tube feedings. Then she and the volunteers had the babies washed, weighed, diapered, dressed, and put down for a nap, all by 9:30 a.m. A quiet moment with Michaela was soon followed by a tour of household duties, playtime, an unexpected trip to the doctor's, a second nap, another round of bottles, and 12 jars of baby food served at 3 o'clock. Next, more playtime, a third nap, the last of 40 diaper changes, another set of clothes, the day's final drink, and finally at 7 p.m., bedtime.
Good night.
Happy birthday to you. But just after the McCoys celebrated the septuplets' first birthday, their lives changed significantly. They moved from their tiny home to sprawling new quarters just up the street. The 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom house that the McCoys now call home was built on and largely furnished by the goodwill of more than 120 companies. It is here that Bobby's experiencing a new peace of mind. How's motherhood treating you these days?
It's going very well. It's getting easier in some aspects, more difficult in others. Easier as far as just general care is concerned. You know, they're not on bottles anymore. They're eating 3 meals a day. But more difficult in that now the discipline issues come in, you know, when you tell them no and they look at you and do it anyway. So.
The pace, while still fast, isn't as breakneck. Bobby has cut the volunteer shift yet again and now relies on fewer people to help from 8 to 5, 6 days a week. That's partly because there is someone else who is home a lot more.
Boom, 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 boom. They like that.
After 15 years of working at the same car dealership in Carlisle, Kenny quit at the end of February.
It was just a good time for me to kind of spread my wings as it was and trying to maybe seek out better ways and more efficient ways to provide for my family.
It was always Bobby's goal to have a lot of kids.
Kenny is now trying a career as a public speaker for religious organizations and social service groups. He says with only 2 to 4 speeches a month, he can support his family and cover the utilities and taxes on a house that has no mortgage. The McCoys are also counting on profits from book projects and product endorsements, some of which involve the children. Here they are shooting an ad for the National Milk Processors, released this week. Each sported their milk mustache with characteristic charm, but getting 8 toddlers to mug for the camera all at once seemed to give even seasoned pros a run for their money. It's the type of challenge that Bobby faces with the determination of a Navy SEAL. And for 2 months, she's drilled Kenny on how to marshal their armed forces.
The first few days were an adjustment, because it was like he didn't know anything about the daily routine, you know, and I got up in the morning and thought, why doesn't he know this? Why doesn't he know what I fix for breakfast for the kids every day? He's been here for 1.5 years.
How much does he play a part in taking care of the children or doing the housework?
Well, he goes in spurts.
Oh, this sounds so familiar.
Some days he is just on a cleaning frenzy and you just can't stop him. And it's like, would you take a break? Why don't you go hold me?
I gotta clean up a little bit first.
Other times it's like, do you think you could help me out a little bit here? Hello, the kids need to be changed. I shouldn't have to tell you this.
You wanna watch TV?
But it balances out, so yeah. I shouldn't complain.
No. Kenny admits it wasn't until he had to be Mr. Mom for a day that he truly understood how hard his wife works.
Bobby was sick for a day. she had to be in bed. And so I did it all myself. Not to mention running upstairs 300 or 400 times to ask questions. Where does this go? How do I do this?
You love that, don't you? He came to bed that Monday night, and I'd already been in bed, you know, like for a couple of hours, and he's like, I am so tired. I'm like, welcome to the real world.
Or at least welcome to Bobby's world. She is the first mother in America faced with caring for 7 children, all the same age, all at once. Even Bobby's mother marvels at her daughter's steadfast calm.
Sometimes I wonder how Bobby does it, but I don't worry about it because I know that she's a person who knows what she wants and how she's going to get it. She's very organized, and I think that that skill in itself is what has kept everything going so well.
That's a safe one.
After 18 months, Bobby says the job she's always wanted, though not the one she bargained for, no longer seems so overwhelming.
Do you feel like you're past some sort of invisible hurdle? This idea of, oh, no one's ever done this before, 7 babies all at once, we've got to get them through all these developmental phases, we've got to help them survive and get through the challenges ahead. This time I'm speaking to you, and there sort of is a sense of relief.
I guess it's probably because we're more used to it. You know, we do have a lot of time now where we're by ourselves, and